Hi, I'm Alison McConnell. On behalf of PLZ Soccer, we'd like to thank you for your support over the course of 2024. We've put together a compilation of the best of the journos. There's been no shortage of opinion on the topics covered from the likes of Andrew Smith, Michael Grant, Stephen McGowan, Moira Gordon, Gordon Parks and many more. So please enjoy.
Alison, you were in discussion with Lee Miller.
Which is terrific clip. I saw. I'm late to watch the lot of it, but what a good clip!
Don't milk a Rico right now. Let's just wait and see the whole programme. Eh?
Did you get a trim?
No, she tried that, but he wasn't for doing any of that.
I can see that.
But I was actually going to plug your show. I don't know why I should bother now. But we've got a brilliant feature that we started last season, and she's a little bit reluctant because we tagged it McConnell Meets, which
we didn't tag it that. We didn't.
It was a slight technicality on the fact that her name is McConnell, and she meets people. So there you are. She sat down with Lee Miller, who's the dad, of course, of Lennon Miller. It almost dismisses what he achieved as a footballer himself. But Lennon Miller, great to get a little insight from Ali chatting to him. You can get it on our YouTube channel.
Tell you a great Lee Miller story quickly.
Yeah, fire away.
An agent friend of mine, you know him, took him down to Bristol City. And he went in, and Lee went into the stadium, and the directors were there, and they dealt with the chief exec and all that. And Lee sat there and listened to everything that was happening. And the agent tells the story that after it was finished, they shook hands and they walked down the stairs towards the car park. And Lee asked the agent, "So how much am I getting?" And the agent went, "Lee, you just sat for an hour and a half discussing exactly what you're getting." Hadn't taken any of it in.
Yeah.
Typical football player. Great guy. But classic football player, how much am I getting?
Yeah, after tax. So
I think he'll be more on the ball when it comes to dealing with Sunderland.
Well, I'll tell you what's a great insight into it, and I hope he goes on to have a great career. But this is this pivotal moment we're talking about with young Scottish players. Alison's got a great interview with his dad, who's a level-headed boy, and has guided him along. It'll be interesting to see what happens to Lennon Miller. We've seen so many of them before, and we want to see, okay, are you going to get your 100 games? Are you going to become a better player? Is the hype going to be backed up with the reality that you can go on to greater things?
I think he's the most exciting young Scottish talent I've cast my eyes on in many a year. I think for the age he is, 17 years of age, his knowledge, his touch, his dexterity, his awareness, his vision, his athleticism, it's a no-brainer. Go and spend the money on him now. And I think he should have been taken, rather than taking somebody like Ryan Jack to the Euros, go and be ambitious and put somebody like that in and take him there. What would he have learned if they brought him on? But I think he's the most exciting talent.
I love elite football. I love it. I go, I take a flight to Champions League Cup final, pay eye-watering. You know what I paid for two tickets. Eye-watering sums, because I love it at the top level. I just think I've been to World Cups, and I was Argentina last year, and I love it. But you're right, when you go down the leagues, there's something else, and it actually touches me quite closely, because I was thinking about this, I was actually thinking about this the other day, because I got a picture of my granddad. And my granddad was a guy that took me to my first games, and it was Shettleston Juniors. That's where we went on a Saturday, because we stayed with him. And that was and I've never lost that. And I've got a really kind of serious, almost pro-face point to make about it. I think Scottish football has been severely and utterly ignored, derided, almost in a contemptuous sense by the ruling classes, the political classes. I think it's been under the actual cultural importance of Scottish football, which can be seen or tasted at a distilled level at this, where it's so important to the community, that it's integral to people getting their prescriptions on a Saturday, guys getting somebody to talk to on a Saturday, guys during, families during COVID getting a bag of messages. You go to Kilburn, Lade Side, what's that in that room? What's the messages for the pensioners?
You've got to think no further than Stenhouse Muir having a library.
A library. They had the library, yeah.
And that's the reason, actually, on a serious, Nutmeg survived 8 years now, and a lot of it is because we reflect the good in the game. It's a critical love, so there's plenty of pieces criticising things going on, but it's also there to champion these places and the great part of society that football plays here.
Yeah, and Sandy Jarnett Hearts kicks it off nicely for me because, it goes in he undoubtedly passes on a wealth of experience to the likes of a Craig Levein, a young Craig Levein. And then you've got Davy Cooper who goes in Motherwell, you know, who, you know, you ask any Motherwell fan, my God, they salivate about him. And why not? He was a genius.
Yeah, there's quite a few examples actually that come to mind. Lubin Moravchik at Celtic, I think, going in the latter stages of career, much derision, no one knowing where he'd come from. I think he's a fabulous player, really, some special moments for Celtic. I always remember him actually when Celtic got in the Champions League, like celebrating when they put Ajax out. He arms aloft, and after it seemed like it'd been the holy grail of his career was to get into the Champions League. So yeah, sometimes clubs can still offer players of that ilk. They can still offer them something too. Ray Wilkins would be another one. Ray Wilkins when he went up to Rangers in the latter stages of his career. Frank Sosie at Hibs. I think fans of those clubs love it. I think you still see the quality. You still see what they've got, maybe at a point in time where you wouldn't have been able to afford them or attract them at that level, but they still retain that semblance of quality.
And when I put the point out on Twitter, or X, as it's now known, Hugh, I always like to sometimes put positive ones out, and you know, and see if you can get any positivity left on that side. But one of them was exactly. One of the points was raised by a Raith Rovers fan who said Dave Neary. I mean, Dave Neary at Raith Rovers, they won the League Cup. He was in that League Cup winning side.
I know, I mean, people just, I think I always remember, you know, people forget how good that generation of players at Dundee United and Aberdeen were. I mean, I always go back to this when Aberdeen were chasing a Ronnie Dyla team. They had Ash Taylor at centre half, and somebody texted me and said, do you think Aberdeen would have won the title if they had McLeish and Miller? And you know, McLeish and Miller themselves. I said, they would win the title if McLeish and Miller were playing with them now in the 63. I mean, that's how good McLeish and Miller were, like the best centre-back pairing in Europe. Hegarty and Neary were viable contenders for that. They were in the argument as well. People forget how good they were. I've got a couple for you. My one would be, in so many ways, in my generation again, if you talk about the greatest high beat ever, people will be talking about the famous five: Gordon Smith, Ormond, you know, Laurie Riley, Turnbull, Bobby Johnson, right? So fair enough. They're just before my time, believe it or not. The greatest high beat to me for somebody was Pat Stanton.
Yes.
And Pat Stanton not only left Hibs to come to Celtic, but left from being a midfield player at Hibs to being a sweeper or certainly a secondary centre-half at Celtic. And he was absolutely terrific. And in that same role, Dave Mackay, who was one of the greatest Tottenham Hotspur players ever, went to Derby County under Clough, and he was completely integral in Derby County's success, you know, under Clough. And he went back from being a midfield player to playing in the middle of the defence. Well, they were the two that would stick out for me.
George Best at Hibs.
Well, the funny thing is, somebody mentioned George Best, and I thought to myself, well, George Best, for the fleeting appearances that he did make, I mean, he scored a brilliant goal for Hibs against Celtic at Easter Road, but there were so few and far between, and at that point it was almost little glimpses of the genius and the light that was fading. But if you get someone who comes in who is, let's just say the benchmark is 31, 32 onwards, who comes into a club and suddenly for a full season or 2 seasons or 3 just gives you a sense of what you haven't had before.
Changes the club, maybe. Changes. Look at Davie Weir at Rangers.
Yeah.
I mean, changes. I mean, Walter would tell you all the time, or Smith would tell you all the time how important Weir was to him, not just as a centre-half, but laying down standards, laying down the way you had to play, when the winning was everything. I mean, this was, I mean, I always remember I had to go and interview Davie Weir, me being my neurotic self, went up to Murray Park to interview him, and I was miles early. And I just walked past the gym, and there was he alone in this gym. He must have been 38, 39 at the time, doing stretches. And when I interviewed him, he says, yeah, I've been stretching for an hour and a half. Just doing stretches.
Yeah.
He says that's just all got to do, man, is to continue playing. So you can imagine what younger players are saying if he's in doing that after a full session. So older players can contribute in so many ways.
Yeah, and it would be remiss of me not on that double whammy for Motherwell. When we mentioned Davy Cooper, Bobby Russell was another player who came in, if anything, of a certain generation. As you go through the generations, Hearts fan says to me, Pasquale Bruno. Do you remember Pasquale?
I do indeed.
So, I mean, he would come in, and a St Johnstone fan mentioned Sergei Baltacha.
Kinnicha at Dundee.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, can you imagine just going in?
And you see, well, Ravanelli was here too.
That's right.
Have you been eating mushrooms this morning?
No. So many of them who appear without getting paid.
I always remember I was down there, you always go, the old days used to send you down to Champions League games and say, Manchester United, Vermont, and just go down there and get Alec, see if you get 2 questions with Alec, and we go and see what you can get in the press room. I always remember I was eating, going up to my buffet and putting a bit of pasta on my plate and all that, and roast it in my shirt, obviously. And a silver-haired person was just eating this beautiful buffet, and I whispered in his ear, "It's a bit different from Den's partner." She looked at Fabrizio Ravanelli for Sky Italia. What world did that have?
Yeah, I mean, those players, strangely enough though, those players in those periods where they were able to just, give a little swan song and a little insight into what they were like when they were better at their peak. When we talk about Cooper at Motherwell, you've mentioned Kinija, who plays in a World Cup final. My God, he's up there at Dens. And
I always remember one day we had gone a drive up to the outlet, at Stirling, the big night place, and then looking for stuff. And turned round, and Kinija was like pushing through the sale rack, all these shirts, and thinking like that, just thinking, what? Like, what's going on?
A sale's a sale. Whether you're in Argentina or whether you're in Scotland, is Souness a shout?
Aye.
Definitely, isn't it?
Yeah.
I went to see Souness with my pal Big Joe as a season ticket holder, and went and saw when he came up, and I got his missus' tickets. I was in the Colton Road end watching just to see Souness, and I remember they hit this ball for about 40 yards, and it went over McCoy's head, and McCoy didn't run for it because he thought, this is going out. Well, of course, it's Souness. So the ball takes a stoat, it spins, and Ali could have got it, but it rolls out of play, because Ali just didn't. Could he have that much control? And there was this shout, this guy started, Souness, you'll just know day. You're free to probably about,
It's those players. Here's one that I mention it only for the people of a certain generation in Paisley, Victor. Who played for St Mirren, and he actually had a career and a sparkling career at Barcelona.
Oh, absolutely. But the other one I always think when you bring these up as well is Zoltan Varga.
Oh, Aberdeen.
And for people, there'll be glazed eyes about Zoltan Varga. And Zoltan Varga came to Aberdeen because he was involved in a betting scandal. He's a Hungarian. And
he lost the bet.
And he had to get. And watching him was just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, what a player he was.
Steve Archibald.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. When he came back, Steve Archibald, when he came back to Hibs, just quality.
You forget that Archie goals. Imagine it now. I always think that when you see the changing face of Scottish football, like in 2000s, early 2000s, you could have a centre forward who's won the Premier League in England. One of the great partnerships of all time. Can have one bad season.
At one point, the most expensive
player
transfer in British football.
One bad season, and he can end up at Celtic.
Yeah, and with that in mind,
how much the landscape has changed in that 2 decades.
Larson at Man United.
Larson anybody, Larson in Barcelona. Larson at Helsingborg. I mean, Larson done it.
Yeah. Listen, it's a trip down memory lane. It's undoubtedly a list that you can add to. If we've forgotten anyone at your club, my apologies, because there are certainly players in the twilight of their career that evoke great memories for a certain vintage of fan. Who knows, maybe Sivert Nielsen will light up the midfield for Aberdeen if he can pull off the pass he pulled off in their game against St Johnstone more frequently. They'll love it.
He's another one, Simon Stainrod at Falkirk.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Stainrod was a
Very shy
type of player, very shy man. I remember him talking about, I think this is Stainrod's one of those guys, undoubted quality, but the mere suggestion that he was into kind of martial arts and he was, showing people his body, that kind of didn't sit well with Yogi, who ended up going into the shower and picking a fight with him, just to show them who was boss. Absolutely, no respect for the fact you've been a really good player. Hold on to this.
Simon Stainrod still have his fedora on.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, it takes a special player to be able to wear a fedora. So 4-4-2, and I know Ali hates it, which is why I tend to, on a regular basis, I work out ways at how I can piss Ali off.
You've been successful.
Sometimes it's just when you say hello to her.
So at this point,
On a daily level?
yes, top 10 list. The 4-4-2 have given us the top 30 managers, but I thought, I haven't got time for that. But there's 10. So Thomas Tuchel's number 10. Do you want to fire in what you think might be in that top 10 list of the best managers in the world right now?
I'm going to guess Pep will be number 1.
Okay, you're going number 1 on that. Anybody else in there that you think?
Ancelotti. I think Ancelotti might have been my number 1. He's got to be fairly high up.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Throw in any.
Amarin and Klopp will be in it.
Amarin?
He'll be in it. I think he's got. I would put Gasperini of Atalanta in it because I think he's one of these coaches whose CV might not be laden with gold, but is Bielsa.
Yeah. You've managed to name 4 that are nowhere near the top 10.
Really?
That is fantastic how you find that in. And then the third one after that is how do you deal with legally any punishment that comes your way? And what is that punishment?
But the technicality getting out of the real one will be, I don't think anybody's under any misapprehension that Manchester City have got a wad of money from certain sources, and outside sources have said, oh, you're using this money is not competitive, this is not reasonable sponsorship money, this is not reasonable naming rights, this is not a reasonable way to spend money on players as vis-a-vis our constitution. To get round that, Man City will be involved in the real detail, will be involved in the detail of it. The bigger point of whether in a capitalist society Manchester City basically should be doing whatever they want with their money and their sponsor is one that we'll have to leave for another programme.
Yeah.
I think people are talking about this case being going to take some time, and it might take weeks and all this.
Well, it's 10 weeks maximum.
Yeah, then that's maximum to solve the initial process of this case. Because if it gets to Manchester City lose in any way of this case, that's just the end of ding round 1.
Yes.
Then the case starts
Goes to an appeal.
Because
Goes to
not
appeal.
only just go to appeal in sporting courts, it could go, and this is be huge if I were thinking of it, Manchester City could burst the ball and say, we're taking this out of sporting arbitration and we're going to the real boys, we're going to the High Court, which of course is football clubs are, shall we say, strongly discouraged to do that. In fact, face sanctions for doing that. But I can see this, if they lose after the 10 weeks, I think that may just signal the start of everything.
And there's all sorts of wild speculation on what, if anything, will be, in many people's eyes, acceptable as a punishment if they are found guilty. If they are guilty of a number of charges which have minor penalties, but if they're found guilty of the big ones, Alison, you've got clubs and you've got fans questioning, and I think we're thin on the ground for sporting integrity at the best of times.
It's a loaded phrase.
Well, of course, there's no such a thing as sporting integrity.
Shorthand in Scotland.
But what you actually suggest is, well, what is acceptable to people? Because you know what's going to happen. People are going to go, oh, you're going to give them
Well,
even £100 million fine.
I was going to say, I find that any kind of financial
Laughable.
penalty is no penalty.
No, not at all.
So what is it?
Well, what is it? Is it stripped of titles? Is it banned from Europe? I thought I'd just look at something just slightly in a broader scale for you guys, because you are sports journalists after all. And when I woke up and I thought, oh, there's top 10, and I automatically thought about you, Ali. Top 10 greatest athletes of all time, according to US sports fans, which was fantastic, Barry, because US sports fans think that the United States of America is the be-all and end-all and nothing else exists. You know, which is why the Green Bay Packers were world champions in the late 60s, and I'm thinking, world champions? Who else plays bloody American football? So they had, US sports fans have voted the number one greatest athlete of all time, Michael Jordan. Mm-hmm. Then they've got Tom Brady. Mm-hmm. Then they've got Muhammad Ali, Babe Ruth, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Jim Thorpe, who was an all-round athlete from the early 20th century, Lionel Messi, Pele and Serena Williams.
One woman.
So...
Ryan Gold.
Amazing, I can't believe he's not in it. And by the way, you didn't see that coming there, but Ali just quickly drew my attention, one woman in there, which is a great battle for us to have, because greatest athletes of all time. Mm-hmm. So make your case. Give me a number one in your mind, and then let's feed off it.
I think I might have had Muhammad Ali at number one.
Yeah, give me of the 10, without us getting into the lineup at the moment. Give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 women that you think should be in there.
Navratilova.
9 times Wimbledon champion. Okay.
I think I would have Martina Navratilova.
As one of the greatest of all time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even though Serena's won more than her.
Yeah, I think it's an argument to have both of them in.
Yeah. Okay.
Really comfortable with that. Who else would you have in?
No, I will give you the definitive 10 that I've picked, which you can dismantle.
Right, let's hear.
But
How many women have you got in yours?
Well, I'm about to tell you. I just need you to make a case for other women.
I just need a wee minute to have a think.
Have a think about the women. But what I've picked out of all of them, and there was a case in my mind. Do you pick them based on their sporting achievements? Do you pick it as the all-round individual? It's a tough call. There's so many things that you could put in the equation. I've got one woman in there, and there's a debate on another woman that possibly, for her all-round contribution, could be contended. I've picked Ali as number one because he was known everywhere in the world, and I think for his boxing ability, had he not taken that stance against Vietnam and the draft, you're talking about a 3-year period where he would have been able to continue his boxing, his dominance, his ability to dominate anyone coming forward. I thought he was a standalone for me, my all-time hero. But he also suddenly elevated himself to a political figure as well, didn't he, Barry?
Yeah, he did. I think you're right in what you say, that did hinder him in terms of his career, but improved his overall persona, if you like, his reputation and how far it was spread. So that was an issue. I don't think anybody could argue that he would be number one. I can't see a better sportsman personally.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got Pele at number 2.
I think Pele would be my number.
Yeah, I had Pele at number 2 because he's such a global phenomenon. Yeah. And the one thing I think, and I don't know how you feel, but I'll get your thoughts on this, but the only thing that a number of people batter certain members of a generation with Lionel Messi, the only thing that I constantly have to remind people of is that South American football dominated world football in the early stages of the World Cup as it stood. whether Britain sent a team or not was neither here nor there. You're talking about 1958, and I think Wales were at the 1958 World Cup. You're talking about a 17-year-old that the rest of the Brazilian team demanded to the manager, he has to be in the team. And at 17 scores 2 goals in a World Cup. Not, let's all wait and see if Messi's eventually going to win it. This is 17, and he's one of the best players in the World Cup, and scores 2 in a World Cup final, and they win 5-2. So I often have to try and highlight that to people because he's just so good. And of all the people who saw, but look at the skills Messi does, look at these wee flicks, look at this. And if you go back and watch a video of Pelé, you know, whether he played exhibition games or not, he couldn't go and move to Europe because the Brazilian parliament and government would not let him leave the country.
Mm-hmm. The other thing is he played at a time where players weren't protected in the same way that Messi has been protected, and has been afforded a level of ability to go and showcase his talents, whereas when Pelé was playing, you could stop by any means, fair or foul.
Yes.
You could tackle from behind.
Yeah.
You know, you could.
Well, he kicked him out of the 1966 World
I was
Cup.
just about to say, when you go back and look at the footage from some of the older World Cups, it was, you know, it's assault at points.
Yeah. So I picked him. I picked Michael Jordan
I think
because
Jordan's got to be in.
Jordan's just a phenomenon. I picked Tom Brady because you can't get to a point where you think, a lot of people were turning around going, I think it's Bill Belichick, and Tom Brady goes, really? And then goes to the Buccaneers and wins it with them. So
I wondered, I haven't seen the rest of your list, but I wondered if Tiger Woods had been there.
well, here's
I
a
wondered
great,
about
here's a
Tiger
great
Woods.
argument for you, because
No, I'll let you finish, sorry.
Michael Phelps,
Yes.
fine. Serena Williams, for me, because at the level the way women's tennis went, you know, Billie Jean King, for me, deserves a place in the history of tennis because she fought for the equality of women in the pay scale, and she was also a pioneer, you know, of women's not only equality but rights, you know, at certain tournaments as well, which I've nothing but admiration for her. But Serena Williams, because she was able to play at a level that was just outrageous, for her 23 titles. I've got Usain Bolt in there, because he's got to be the only 100 metres guy who ever had a wee look round and started smiling before he crossed the line.
Started jogging before he finished.
That's another minor technicality, you're right, Barry. I've got Messi in there. I've just given a nod because somebody will come up with a 10th one. I just mentioned Wayne Gretzky, who was the greatest ice hockey player of all time. Probably somebody I'm open to debate there. Now, my all-time favourite golfer is Jack Nicklaus. He's won 18 majors. Mm-hmm. He won the Masters at 56. I mean, come on. I think if anything, he's the GOAT. Tiger is a phenomenon, but you know, in the end, when you look, there was that period where he just fell off the edge of a cliff.
Yeah, he did. If you're comparing Nicklaus and Woods, then yes, you go Nicklaus first. I still think Woods, because of the outstanding talent that he had, would probably be in a top 10 somewhere.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Not near the top, I wouldn't have said, but probably bottom half.
Yeah.
I just think he's a...
Is he the GOAT for you in golf?
I was a kid when Nicklaus was about, so and I didn't watch a lot. I was too busy watching football at that point.
Yeah.
He's certainly up there, yeah. He's right up there. Nobody had, when he came on the scene and was really at his peak, nobody had seen anything like that kind of level of consistency from anybody in golf.
He's almost like they took footage, I remember, because obviously working at STV, you're able to look at the footage as well. And I can remember old Scott Sports where they said there's a kid in Buenos Aires, and they had black and white footage of Maradona, keeping the equivalent of a tennis ball up there. Yeah. I mean, it was just outrageous, and people knew he was going to be a phenomenon. And then you see Tiger Woods as a kid, and you think, oof, this guy's going to come through and blow the place apart. But then
Maradona in your top 10?
No, genuinely not. No, I'm left myself wide open with Messi being in there. But Messi's domestic success and goals.
Again, though, like you think of
phenomenal.
the treatment that
It's outrageous.
Maradona had. You think of like how robust the physicality of
Yeah.
the game was when Maradona was playing.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, the way and the height of him as well. I mean, height of nothing, and he just he got kicked and got back up, and he got kicked and got back up, unless you happen to be the Athletic Bilbao goalkeeper.
Yes.
But that was one of the things I think that Maradona, that endeared Maradona to fans, was that street mindset of, if you kick me, I'm going to kick you harder when I get a chance. I quite liked that about him.
Would you have him in the top
10? For nostalgia, probably yes.
Yeah.
But you can't have him above Pele.
I would have him in the top 2.
Pele, talking about the comparisons with Messi. Messi was in his 30s by the time he won a World Cup. Pele had won 3 before he was 30.
Yeah.
Just a ridiculous athlete. But yeah, I couldn't form a top 10 and not have Maradona in there.
Yeah, well, listen, for the basis of that, I'm open to changing my mind.
When players don't want to know truth,
Yeah.
absolutely not. Brendan Rodgers is a master of kidding players on that they're brilliant.
Yeah.
You got to make sure that you don't affect that kind of the psyche of a dressing room is a very fragile thing.
And when I was playing in the midfield, sometimes I would say to you, come on, you've got a lot of ability. I mean, I sometimes look at you and I think to myself, wow.
Were you in a golf cart when you
No,
were playing in the
I'll tell you
midfield
something,
like
the
a wee
thing is,
paddle?
I've just stopped with that. I used to always shout to me, Parsi, give me the ball, one on one.
Yes.
So I'm looking at him, he's meaning, give me it, so I'm going to go at the guy, and I'm going, this is never going to happen, but I used to give him it anyway.
Yeah. And I used to look at you, Parsi, and I think to myself, wow, he used to be a professional footballer. And I always used to think to myself, I could have made it. If he's a professional footballer, I should have been playing for Hibs or Hearts.
Yeah.
Because I looked
Get them
at
relegated.
I look at your complete lack of non-tracking,
Yeah.
and then I looked at your complete lack of ability to beat a man, and I thought, I've got it. I've definitely got it.
However, for me, there's a European Super League unofficially in operation already. You've got the clubs from the big 5 nations who are clearly in a completely different ballpark to Slovan Bratislava and to Young Boys of Bern, to Celtic and Dinamo Zagreb. And you know what? I'm just getting to the point now where I'm thinking, see if there's a European Super League, bring it on, make it happen, give it promotion and relegation, and if Celtic and Rangers go into League 3 or whatever, that's fine. But let's stop faffing about with us pretending that in some shape or form, clubs who are in small leagues like Scotland or Croatia or Slovakia could somehow compete with clubs of these vast resources who can call in the very best players in the planet.
Yeah.
I think it's time to make it official.
So I'm going to switch to Aberdeen 1983 as a contender for the best of the last 40 years. Leighton, Rugby, McLeish, McMaster, Cooper, Strachan, Simpson, Weir, Black and McGee, and you had the kind of Stuart Kennedy, Watson, Hewitt, Gunn and Angus in there as well as of course the ultimate John Hewitt is the super sub, but for me, as someone growing up who Celtic and Rangers fans, David, would get on a supporters bus and head up and stop at Stonehaven and go to their mates, wouldn't it be great if we got a draw up here?
That's right.
Because they were so good. And even if Celtic and Rangers were winning at half-time, Fergie's half-time team talk flipped the game on its head, changed everything, because those guys went out and either through fear or through that belief that Fergie and that siege mentality and that everyone's against his mentality, he had them playing out of their skin, and they had so much quality. This for me is the ultimate side.
Spoiler alert, that's my team, and that's my team out of all the teams, and it's really unusual because what I did, because I'm an obsessive old Egypt that I haven't even got a telly in my house.
You've only been in a year and a half.
I sat down and I said, well, who are these teams? Who would I pick? Who'd be my subs bench and that? And only one Aberdeen player get in my 11 because I decided to pick a Dundee United back four because I thought that back was it. But that team, for me, I said, was the best. And it's the best for two reasons. I think when people look back at Alex Ferguson for all his great achievements and wondrous achievements, Manchester United, what he did in Aberdeen in the early 80s was unprecedented and has never been repeated. Peter's talking about going up in the supporters bus to Aberdeen. Forget about that, Peter. What Fergie did was Aberdeen teams came down to Ibrox, Parkhead and Hampden and won.
Yeah.
That's what they did. They came down, if you were going along to Celtic Park and Aberdeen visit, oh my God, they're just going to run aggressive, physical, technique. And I think my last word on it, I think the whole thing about these teams, everything in professional football is about winning. Forget aesthetics or anything like that. It's about winning. Win. And they won 2 European trophies, which is 2 more than all the other sides put together.
Yeah, and the other key point, it's a great point you make, Hugh, and the reason why I can't see past them is because when you look at the makeup of a side and when we discuss modern day teams and how they've got plan A but some of them haven't got plan B, this team could mix it, they could fight, they had absolute skill, they had players that could actually create something that would beat a man and then create a 2-on-1, and then they had finishers. So if you're looking, you're thinking of all the great managers down through the years, you know, the Bill Shankleys, the Bob Paisleys, the Brian Cloughs, the Jock Stein, Sir Matt Busby, Ferguson totally grasped the fact that spine of steel, sprinkling of gold dust.
Yeah, without doubt. I think I tend to gravitate to what Hugh's saying. I just think the achievements, it's almost like the Lisbon Lions for Celtic. It is like, it casts now forevermore. This is the greatest team that we've ever had, and everyone walks in its shadows subsequently. I just think fabled, iconic, a team that, an unfancied team. When you think when Alex McLeish went up, and what you're having to do is change the psychology too around the club, around the team, the belief that you instill, and then to go and win 2 European trophies, it's unimaginable.
Yeah, the favourite of all the players out of them all, and the good goalkeeper as well, and that famed central defensive partnership. For me, Strachan was just the jewel in the crown.
He was absolutely fantastic, and he was surrounded by players that could do what you said earlier on, a bit of everything. You had fantastic players around him, but you also had guys that, again, in the trenches, that's who you'd want beside you, you know. And I just think that was a moment in time that, you know, that Ferguson brought together that team, and they just moulded together perfectly. And the final, like Stuart Kennedy was a terrific right back. He was injured, missed. He'd have played in the final, you know. But you just go right through that team. You think, he would do. And you know, Mark McGee, you know, he was actually for a spell, he was one of the finest strikers in Europe. We don't really, I don't know whether it's because McGee had a very up and down managerial career in Scotland and stuff like that, that he's almost like a fun figure, you know. But what a football player he was, you know. They just had right throughout the team. But you're talking about gold dust, and Strachan was one that sprinkled the gold dust.
Yeah. And the other thing about it, let's not forget, just as a little footnote to this, and this is where managers, you know, the difference between good managers and great managers. Alex Ferguson swapped Ian Scanlon for Peter Weir. Ian Scanlon was a brilliant player. Peter Weir was outrageous. He could beat men for fun.
It's always interesting. See if you go to all these sporting dinners or one-on-ones, and you get Alex Ferguson talking to Dougie Donnelly and all this. And as he's retired, he's become more expansive, Alec, you know, because he's more relaxed about things. And I always remember, there's a few things I remember one night when he was talking, and he became quite digressive, and he was talking about, he says, see Peter Weir on his day, if we had Weir on his day, we could have beaten anybody in the world. And it cast my mind back in this old doddery way that I can't remember where I put my car keys, but I can remember Aberdeen v Ipswich Town.
I knew you were going to say that.
He was playing against a really good world-class fullback,
Mick Mills,
the right back, and he killed him that day. He killed him. It was like It was like the social work should have come on and said, "Listen, this is no fair. This is trauma. And you'll just have to." He was, that usual cliche, unplayable. He was just like absurdly unplayable, and Aberdeen had that in their team, but what they were based on was really good technical, solid ability. I mean, you can just have to look at the midfield too. It was Simpson and Cooper. You're not talking about Iniesta and Javi here. You're talking about guys that's going to allow other guys like the Strachan, Weir to play. I think if you take Strachan, the likes of Weir out, and of course that three at the back, all great players. But like all good teams, they were much better as a sum of the parts. Much better.
But it's a
Saying
mentality
about-
thing as
saying
well,
a
isn't
good
it? You know,
coach.
when you see
It's exactly that.
there was a cup final, wasn't there? Quite a famous one where they won the cup final, and the little guys ran onto the pitch to talk to Fergie, and he's fully expecting them to effusive and giving it brilliant achievement, and he absolutely slaughtered his team while they're running about with the cup.
I actually think he spoke about that not a lot. He said he was quite embarrassed by that.
he is embarrassed.
Because at the time, just where he was in his life at that point, I have a certain kind of standard, and I was still annoyed. I think he was funny on it fairly recently, like he kind of cringing when you look.
But that's the other thing about them. They've got a great camaraderie, because when I was up doing the 40th anniversary, when we all went for a pint at the end of the event, right? Everybody was getting bevied, and they said, Strachan was saying that Alex and Willie Miller, went up on an open top unicycle,
Because they were the only two
that played. They won it. What was it like? We weren't there, because they were the two golden ones. But nevertheless, that was the kind of a camaraderie. And I did have the good fortune of having Sir Alex one day in a very small gathering, and Alex McLeish was there, and I did that same line about, there's Alex, he won the cup on his own. There was nobody else in his team. And you could see Sir Alex going, "No, don't mention that." But I'm going to shock you here. I'm giving them a 10.
I'm on the basis that nobody ever deserves a 10. I'm giving them a 9.
Right.
I will, spoiler alert, it's the team, because of what I've said, it's the best team for me.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether I should have held this to the end. The best house till the end. What are you giving them?
9.
9.
9.5.
9.5. All right, there you go. Just because he started that stupidity.